Well, hello out there, and welcome to another Friday night live stream. It's good to be here, and it looks like we already have 7 people in the live chat. That's great. Hello to all of you out there, Paula and Joe and Anchor and Angela. I see out there, and anyone else who might be watching that hasn't put in their comments yet. It's good to see y'all here, and thank goodness it's Friday. Oh, we've got 11 people in here now. And Tracy, hi Tracy, good to see you. And Miss Angela, how are you over there?
I am doing well.
You are in California, aren't you?
I'm in California, Northern California in Crescent City.
Beautiful.
It's lovely. It's cold. It's much colder than it was in Boise. I think when I left Boise, we were, at about 80 degrees, and
Oh,
it's
nice.
and so it's in the 50s here. And the sun has come out today, though. It was supposed to be cloudy the whole time that we're here, but we got some sun today, so that's kind of nice.
Good. I've been busy. I was doing this conference for the what's it called? It's called the first
Advocacy?
annual. Yeah, it's the Peer Summit, the Missouri Peer Summit, and it was put on by the Missouri Recovery Alliance, which is a new organization. Which is taking the place of the Missouri Recovery Network, which used to get state funding but has been unfunded, so it's gone away. So these people started the Missouri Recovery Alliance, which is self-funded, and they put on the first conference, the Peer Summit, and it was amazing. I was just blown away by the speakers, and I learned so much. So much went through my head, Angela. I just have not quite sorted it all out yet. It's just pretty amazing. So,
Yeah.
but
We'll be excited to hear more about it.
yeah. I think that I would like to ask some of the speakers to come on as guests. I mean, they were just so interesting, the stuff that they did. One guy in particular, Chad Sabora, he was talking a lot about social justice and harm reduction, and he has had a lot of experience with getting things done in Missouri. And he also helps advise on recovery legislation, and so legislation having to do with recovery issues on a national level and everything. Is really, really interesting guy. But when he was talking, I was really surprised. But apparently, Missouri has approved for a safe consumption site, is what they call them, in St. Louis. But we have to wait to find out what the feds are going to do, because right now the Department of Justice will arrest anybody who's using in a safe consumption site. So they're going to, yeah. So, but we don't know under the new Justice Department and the new Attorney General if they're going to enforce that or not. But it would be really cool, because evidence shows that those things save lives, and there's absolutely no reason not to have one. So I'd love to see that happen. But anyway, that was just one of many things that I learned. But what really blew me away is just the incredible people in the state. And I know if it's happening in Missouri, I mean, everywhere it's got to be happening, but just really amazing people that are dedicated to making life better for people in recovery, and just trying to, do things that will have sensible drug laws and so forth. It's just incredible stuff. So I'm just really happy to be plugged into that, and I'm looking forward to learning more. So yeah, I'll be talking more about that over the coming year, I'm sure. Hi, Dale.
And you said it's secular by nature.
Totally secular. I mean, one thing they talk a lot about is harm reduction. Harm reduction, there's science that says it works. It's helpful to a lot of people. And it seems to be controversial, and it needn't be, really, because it the whole thing is that nobody gets into recovery when they're dead, so keep them alive. They have a chance. And what's funny is the guy that was talking about harm reduction, the person I mentioned earlier, Chad Sabora, he actually quoted the Big Book. He says, the Big Book was doing harm reduction. Oh, hey, Greg, a new member. Cool. Welcome. But he
Yeah.
was
Weren't they doing it when they went to, and they bring alcohol with them?
exactly.
Yeah.
It says in the big book, you might want to have a bottle handy to help a new recruit along, or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
So
For
yeah, they were doing harm
detoxing.
reduction in the early days of AA, So it's like it shouldn't really be that controversial, but I don't know. It was just a lot of fun to be there and learn about all this stuff. It was all new information for me. But you're right; it was all totally
Hmm.
secular. Now, that's not to say that there weren't some speakers that would talk about faith-based organizations, because that's a big
Right.
part of the recovery network.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's all
Definitely.
about how to work with those people. And we do believe that, everybody needs their own path. And if somebody's
Hmm.
faith is important to them and helps them with their recovery, then more power to them. But
Right.
basically, yeah. And when you're working with these people, it's all about evidence. What does the evidence say that works? and
Right.
and that's part of working with the faith-based people, is helping them understand that there's evidence behind medically assisted treatment, for example, which
Hmm.
some people think is bad because they say you're substituting one drug for another, when there's actually evidence that says no, this actually helps people. So it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah. It'll still take some negotiating and stuff, because there
mhm.
is still, a large part of the population that thinks it's a moral
Yeah,
issue,
yeah,
a moral shortcoming
yes.
that people have, and yeah, and then there's quite a few nowadays that understand the science behind it, and more of the medical view of it, and yeah,
And of
so
course,
I'm
there's a
excited
large
to hear
percentage
more.
of people that don't care about science or evidence.
That is true. That is true. So
What are we gonna do?
yeah, how do we get along? So
And there was actually a session on that too. It was like this. I attended this one. It was like really interesting today. It was all about dealing with people with different political views. Just
oh wow,
yeah,
they
and
really
how to
had that,
navigate
huh?
that. It was really interesting. So anyway,
I think that probably needs to be like for the whole population and not just those in recovery.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because she was talking about how divided we are, and this isn't the first time that this country's been divided. I mean, we had a civil war, for goodness sakes, and so
Yeah.
there's been times in the past when we've been really divided, but this does seem a little bit different. Cliff says that evidence
Yeah.
is overrated.
Right. So those of us who are on board with the evidence based and the harm reduction are going to secede to Canada, or
Right.
become Canadian, and then the rest will, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, Angela was traveling, and she's like in
Yeah.
California, and she's been on the road, and she's been doing all this stuff. And I've been doing these conferences, and I've been busy, busy, busy. So we're trying to think of different topics for tonight. And
Hmm.
everything that I was coming up with was super complicated, which was causing me a lot of work to prepare for. And finally,
Yeah.
I was going to do a Jeopardy game, and I was trying to put
Mhm.
together a Jeopardy game. And then I thought that I would try to find some video and play that. And finally, I said, okay, let's just pull a reading from Joe's book.
Right.
That
Yeah.
always
She's
works.
sending me all these messages that I'm getting as I'm on this 12-hour drive. And finally I'm like, I'll just think or I'll sleep on it and let you know. And so yeah, that's how we come up with our topics, people. So
I went ahead. I pulled a reading from May 10th, because the other readings I didn't care for. I guess not
sounds
that
good.
the Joe's part, though. Believe me, was good. It was just, I don't know. The topic was just kind of, I don't know. I just wasn't into it, I guess.
Yeah.
So I thought that I would just go ahead and share the. Do you have the book with you, Angela? Do you want to read it? Do you want me to read it?
I don't have the book with
Okay,
me. I can pull it up if I need to, but
that's all right. I can read it. I'm gonna go ahead and
sounds
share the
good.
screen real quick. And we'll use this for a topic, and we're going to need you all out there in Facebook land and YouTube land to help us out. So you can do that by calling us at our toll-free number 844-899-8278, and just making comments in the chat there on in the live chat. So let me go ahead and share screen. There we go. I don't know if you can see it or not, but that's okay, because I'm going to read it for you, and I read really well. Okay. Oh, by the way.
Yes, you do. Good job, John.
Thank you, thank you. By the way, my microphone, I turned it up full blast because somebody told me my sound wasn't so great last time, but
Mhm.
whatever. So hopefully, if I'm blasting your eardrums, just let me know. So anyway, Here we go. This is from May 10th, and it's about a tradition. Okay. It says each group has but one primary purpose: to carry its message to other codependents who still suffer. Ooh, how interesting. This actually comes from coda.org, another organization, but they are using our traditions, which they're allowed to do. Each group has but one primary purpose: to carry its message to other codependents who still suffer. Okay. Bill Wilson said we should rejoice in the fact that drunks are getting sober anyway at all. George Valiant, a Harvard doctor, joined AA as a non-alcoholic trustee in 1998 and estimated that 40% of sober people are so because of AA. AA is not everything to everyone, which means that it doesn't profess to have found a cure for every problem or even the one and only solution for alcoholics. AA is for people who want to stop drinking but can't on their own. Understanding the limitations of our recovery programs can keep us from developing unreasonable expectations. People are at liberty to take or leave our help. We don't know what is best for people. Tradition 5 helps us, the newcomer, and the public stay clear on what the fellowship has to offer. A diverse membership improves the odds that the newcomer can relate to and or be inspired by someone. It also gives us all a greater tapestry of experience and perspective to draw upon. Looking around at our home groups, do we see that they reflect the general population just outside our doors? What might there be about our groups that frustrates carrying the message to sufferers? Habits and rituals may make one group feel welcoming and comfortable, while different habits and rituals make another group feel uncomfortable. If our problem doesn't accurately reflect our community, is there more our groups can do to adapt to gender, racial, and cultural differences? Our primary purpose is to make all who suffer feel welcome. We feel welcome and comfortable at our meetings. Is there anything we do that would discourage potential members from other cultural backgrounds? How is our primary purpose different from a single purpose? Do I follow the crowd or take the lead in tabling ideas to make my group better for everyone? So there you go. There's a lot in there, very intelligently written about this tradition. And oh boy, it's and we all love talking about traditions. I know. so there we go. There you are. Hey, Joe. Very well done, Joe. Joe, you're gonna have to help us out with this one too, I think. So because you understand this, being the author. But anyway, Angela, tell me, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, a couple of things. Yeah. It's not always my favorite topic, but reading this one, I like the idea of looking at a cultural aspect of what are our groups like. One of the things that I liked about my first home group was something that a lot of other people who attended the group, once or twice hated. And that was, there was a timer, so we literally had one of those little timer things that the timekeeper would, move over to 3 minutes. And as soon as that dinged, you were done. And there were a lot of people who in the larger AA community that would come to our meeting, and they get very upset about that. They did not like the timer. They felt that, it was imposing, and it just gave them, a bad feeling. Whereas, I liked it, and some other people who, came up with it or decided to use it liked it because they felt that it created, fairness. You knew that everybody, who wanted to talk would get 3 minutes. And so the people who, tend to be long-winded, like me sometimes, would be relegated to the 3 minutes as well. And so, so they were, people who, the fairness of being able to speak was important to them, tended to like that. And so, that was one of the things that I thought of when I was reading over this. Was it's something that made me feel comfortable because, I knew that I wouldn't be sitting there through somebody else's 8-minute, speech. They'd only have time for mine. No, but yeah, I liked that. But it was something that I recall quite a few people didn't like. And I know that some groups have been doing it with Zoom as well. And I think that, that has worked out well, I think, in most cases. Most people, don't intend to be talking for more than, their share of time. It just kind of happens. So it seems to be working out well in most places. One of the other things that I thought of was, regarding cultural backgrounds that might make a difference is I know that sometimes I've been in meetings where they did somewhat of a late shaming thing. Like if somebody came in late and didn't know what the topic was, somebody be like, well, blah, 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 on time. And, and that some people are like, this meeting starts on time. And I even, one of the things that was recorded where I was the lead for it, or kind of the chair, I even said that at the beginning of it, like, let's get this started on time. And I'm like, why did I say that? I don't say stuff like that usually, but it's something that I've heard in AA and I've been in groups where, that was very much, part of the culture, I guess, that, we start on time. And so there are some cultures, at least in, in Idaho and other places too, but we don't have a lot of culture in Idaho, so I'm aware of a few, and time is not as important. Starting things on time or ending things on a certain time. It's just not part of their deal. Their deal is more of just being there when you're there and whoever's there at that time. And so I think that that's something that I hadn't really thought about that much until I read this passage. And so that was another thing that came up for me in this. And then the singleness of purpose is, it's one that I'm not super big on. I get it, so when I think of this topic, I do more of it like Tradition 5, my understanding is that it's regarding the group. So a group has a primary purpose, and that primary purpose, the group's primary purpose, is to carry the message. And, so what's the message?
Right.
The message that you can recover is basically what the group's purpose is to provide hope to individuals who are still suffering. And then my understanding. Okay.
I'm sorry. Let's see who
No
this
problem.
is. I'm sorry for interrupting you. Hello.
Hey, John, it's Cliff.
Oh, hey, Cliff. How about that? How you doing? You're calling from Wichita, aren't you? Is that right? Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, how you doing?
Yeah, oh, good. I like the topic. We had something similar to this come up Wednesday. I've talked to you before. I've been trying to start a secular meeting here in Wichita, and we got all the way ready for it, then something called the pandemic hit.
Yeah, you guys were working on that for a long time.
Not a good time to start a group.
Your district want
for a while.
This is something your district wanted to do for the inclusivity committee or something like that. Was that what it was?
We were doing it through accessibility.
Accessibility.
Accessibility. Yeah, because I think it is an accessibility issue.
It is.
And I brought that up, and some people agreed with me. Some people didn't. Like normal. But we did get them going, and we were having some at the library. And we finally got a place to have them. But like right when we're kind of setting it up, the pandemic hit, and I was like, well, let's just put everything on hold for a while. And because, I was like, and I told people there's virtual meetings out there that have already been going on. And so we're probably going to get organized. But back to what I was talking about on Wednesday, one of the people that were involved with our forming group went to my home group, which is usually pretty inclusive. But there was someone there that was spouting off about stuff and very religious oriented, and not even religious oriented, just very crazy religious oriented, not even like factual Bible stuff,
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it was just his own interpretation of a religion. Yeah.
Okay.
And, the guy ended up walking out, and he was ticked off. And I told him, I was like, I mean, I was like, I want to help him out, but it's really hard to let other people be where they're at, because I know nobody's listening to that guy because he's Mr. Conspiracy Theory anyway, and I mean, people don't listen to him anyway. I mean, you probably had guys like that in the meeting before, and I'm not scared that he's going to deter someone the wrong way. I mean, he usually starts off telling people he's not an alcoholic and he's a saint. So,
okay,
yeah, he's very interesting character. But he usually doesn't talk very much, and but
when he does, he has a lot to say.
I think that's that's one of the reasons I want to start getting back onto this group, is to give people that want to get away from some of the more religious talk at meetings, a place to come, and like I talked to you a couple of years ago, John, and I think if nothing else is to have it in the schedule for someone that has, may think AA is a religious organization,
right.
Say, oh, there's a secular meeting, I mean, if that helps one alcoholic, I think that's worth forming a group, and I think primary purpose, I do believe in that, and I have to get out of my own way sometimes, because I've been right where this guy is that walked out. I used to be like, I need to fix people. They're thinking wrong, and I kind of learned that maybe it's me that's thinking a little bit wrong. I don't need to fix them. I need to let them be where they're at. But at the same time, I need to find solutions, maybe to help other people that may not want to be at those types of meetings. If that makes sense. Yeah,
it does. Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. When you guys do get that meeting going, I'll drive down to Wichita and attend one. That'd be kind of fun. See what you guys got going. I've never been to a meeting in Wichita.
Wichita's not too far of a drive.
No, not at all. In fact, I like that drive. I love driving through the Flint Hills area down there, from the area between Emporia and Wichita. I think it's really beautiful. So
it's a good drive, but I really do like that, and I think that's one of my favorite lines. One of my favorite stories in the Big Book is, what is it now? Acceptance was the answer. They renamed it from Dr. Alcoholic Addict. And where he says, if I don't know what's best for me, how am I going to know what's best for somebody else?
Yeah, true.
And I was like, I like that line, and I was like, there's a lot of great lines in there. Not that I just really liked how he wrote the story. He's a very humorous guy. And it's a really good story. But, and it really helped me kind of zone in on stuff and being able to accept things. I mean, even though in that page 417, it's a little bit religious oriented, a bit, I could say, but I can look past that. And I think that's the big thing. And I try to help people be able to look at it from their own point of view, whether they're religious or not religious,
Yeah.
Right.
I think there's good stuff to get out of it. I don't want to hog the whole meeting, so.
Well, thank you for calling. It was really nice to hear from you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Good to hear from you, Cliff.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. That's funny. He's been working on that meeting for a while. I thought that it had already been going, but
I think there were a couple of them, like Jackie's meeting. They were, starting to form stuff and getting ready to hold, actual meetings, and then pandemic hit. And so they're online now. And I think it's doing well, but it's interesting the different meetings that have we're planning to start. And then now they got a boost, I think, from this and got some help. But I was thinking about what he was saying about, 417 and for me, I think it's more of an acceptance in, accepting reality, what is reality, and coming to terms with that, more than trying to, think of anything as being, divinely, inspired or happening for a reason, as in, like someone's guiding it.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of just that, I need to accept that, reality as it is. And that's usually where I get stuck, because I, think it should be a different way, or,
Mm-hmm.
something's not fair is usually my problem. It's like, that's not fair. It's like, yep, it's not fair.
Yeah.
And I need to adjust. But yeah, so, and I do, I don't have an issue with tradition 5. I think that the group's primary purpose
Mm-hmm.
is great, and I think it's important, and it helps groups, come together, and it can also, kind of help with evening personality and all of that kind of stuff. It's the singleness of purpose
Yeah.
that is, a little bit more difficult for me. So, like, I understand. I think one of the literature pieces on it says that the reason for such an exaggerated focus is to overcome denial. And that, particularly with alcoholics, according to the literature, this literature, AA literature, alcoholism's cunning, baffling, and powerful, right? And so that, having a singleness of purpose is important, so that people, will identify alcoholism as their problem, rather than all the other stuff. So I guess the idea there is that that we would rather be addicts, or codependents, or whatever the other stuff is, than call ourselves an alcoholic. And I don't know that that's true, so it may have been the case, and, maybe it is true for some people, but, the necessity of it these days is difficult for me, because I do see that there's so many different addictions, and we all seem to, well, not we all, the majority of people, it seems, recognize that they have addictions to multiple things, not
Right.
just alcohol. And so yeah, so, it's something that I kind of, don't prioritize in my recovery, the idea of singleness of purpose. I kind of get where it's coming from. And I think there is some, I don't know if it's in the literature, but I was reading something about, I think it was a trustee or somebody who was talking about that, nowhere do we say that our program is for people whose only problem is alcohol, but alcohol is the common bond that all of us in AA share. And and that that I can understand. I just don't know that, I think it's important to tout singleness of purpose, but, for some people it is. And yeah, if that works, then great. I guess part of it seems to clash for me with, primary purpose,
Yeah, I
because
know
it
the two kind
seems
of confuse me.
exclusionary. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, there is literature where, they kind of circle around it, and so that it's not, but yeah, it's not a huge thing for my
Yeah.
personal recovery.
What
How
kind of
about
drives me
you?
crazy? What drives me crazy about the singleness of purpose thing, I guess, is that it seems like it's kind of exclusionary, whereas
Hmm.
the primary purpose, it's just wide open. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety, right? Is that what it is? I think it is. I can't remember.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
it
that's what it
is.
is. It's a carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. So that's our our primary purpose, but we will have other purposes. The singleness of purpose thing, it seems like people use that to try to control what someone is saying in a meeting, So, like, in other
Hmm.
words, don't dare talk about depression or any other problem you might have. You got to stick to alcohol related subjects only, which, I don't know. If you're talking about your recovery, there's all kinds of subjects that you're going to bring into that. So that it kind of confuses me. I just Googled it, the primary purpose and singleness of purpose. And I came upon this website, aamonterey.org. So this is the Monterey Bay area intergroup of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it lists the primary purpose, says what that is. The primary purpose of AA is to carry its message, like we just said. Experience with alcohol is one thing all AA members have in common. It is misleading to hint or give the impression that AA solves other problems. Okay. And then singleness of purpose, they say, there are those who predict that, oh, this is Bill Wilson's quote, I think. I don't know. There are those who predict that AA may well become a new spearhead for a spiritual awakening throughout the world. Okay. When our friends say these things, they are both generous and sincere, but we of AA must reflect that such a tribute and such prophecy could well prove to be a heady drink for most of us. That is, if we really came to believe that this is the real purpose of AA. I don't think it is. I don't think anybody thinks that is. Whatever. So I don't know. I think all this kind of stuff are things to argue about, but in the real world, I've never really seen groups taken over by people with other problems. And honestly, when you get into a meeting anyway, unless you're talking about like it's a speaker meeting or something around here anyway, the meetings don't generally center on whatever substance you were using anyway. I mean, it's usually about whatever's going on in your life today and how you're,
Right.
what you're doing is in part of your recovery to navigate life without, relying on whatever substance. So I've never
Right.
really seen, it seems like that some people think that there's this big threat that people are going to come to AA meetings who aren't alcoholics and it's going to ruin everything. And I've just never seen that happen.
Yeah. 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 Well, the reason for it is I think, that Bill Wilson, February 1958, a grapevine letter. So when I was looking at some of this, he actually says that let's see, where is it? Something like sobriety, freedom from alcohol through the teaching and practice of the 12 steps is the sole purpose of an AA group. Yeah. Groups have repeatedly tried other activities and they have always failed. It's also been learned that there is no possible way to make non-alcoholics into AA members. I'm not sure what that's
Where's
about.
That from? Is that the 12 and 12 you're reading from?
No, it's from the grapevine letter from Bill W. in 1958.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So it says you can't make non-alcoholics into alcoholics.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And we have to confine our AA groups to a single purpose. If we don't stick to these principles, we shall almost certainly collapse. And if we collapse, we cannot help anyone. Mm. And so, so I think that's where, it comes from, the idea. but I don't know if that's necessarily, true. And, it is, difficult because it does bring up fear of that, if we don't stick to this, then we'll collapse and then people won't get sober. And so it's kind of a threat to our individual sobriety as well as, to what, purpose a lot of us have in recovery, which is to help other people in recovery. And so that can be scary as well. But I think, how my recovery's evolved is that I don't know. Well, one, I don't really have that fear because I think there's so much now, and there continues to develop lots of ways to recover and to heal, and and for some people, it's not even recovery isn't even the term that they'd prefer to use because it's to them, it's not about specific substances or even addiction. Usually it's something else, maybe a mental health issue or, childhood trauma or whatever. And so those terms aren't helpful to them. And so I think that there's a lot of different tracks, that people are going in regards to healing from, whether it is addiction or childhood issues or whatever. And so I don't know that anything from that letter that Bill W. wrote, makes me feel more inclined to, get behind the singleness of purpose thing. Because I don't feel threatened by other stuff.
No.
So, but again, that's a personal thing. And I guess where we're at in our recovery at the moment, I'm trying to think if there would have been a time, in early recovery that might have meant something to me. And I don't know. when I did get to AA, it was because of alcohol and
Mhm.
the effect that my drinking had on my life. But I had already realized that it wasn't just drinking, that,
Right.
my original one was food, and that I took that ability, to compulsively overeat away from myself and went to drinking and just replaced it. So it still wasn't a major, thing in my mind. I guess because AA did help me to get sober and stop, drinking alcoholically, or drinking alcohol at all. That yeah, maybe I could have gone down the line that, this is so important to me that I would be fearful of losing the groups. And so, if somebody said that, we have to, concentrate only on talking about, our issues with alcohol, otherwise, these groups will go away, then that might have, affected me or affected the way I think about, this particular issue. But, otherwise, no, I don't think that it was important to me early on either.
Yeah. It just seems to me like I just have never seen it in real life really become a problem. I mean, there have been addicts in meetings for sure, and have been since Dr. Bob was going to meetings, But
Right.
generally, these people also have a desire to stop drinking, which is fun. This is the only requirement for membership. So
Mm-hmm.
I just have never seen it actually cause problems. Although I have seen people upset about it before.
Yeah, yeah, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. Anchor says that someone else may know more, but at one point there was a no and a movement in AA because they didn't want people saying I'm an alcoholic and a.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There are some groups in Boise that that they don't like that, and that they really emphasize you having to say that that you have a desire to stop drinking,
Uh-huh.
and and so yeah, and they are closed meetings. For
Uh-huh.
that. And so that was one of the things that I learned as I got into sobriety and into the fellowship, was the difference between open meetings and closed meetings. And that, I've always had my home group meeting as an open meeting. I don't think that I would make a home group meeting that was closed, my home group meeting, I guess, so because I think it's important for open meetings. I understand why some people, prefer closed meetings, and that, particularly say for women's meetings, or, particularly or particular special interest meetings, that makes sense. But, just to exclude, people who don't say, that they're an alcoholic, that's not helpful for me, or the kind of recovery that I feel comfortable in. These days I usually don't announce myself as an alcoholic. I haven't, for a while.
That's a
I
hard
won't
habit
say
to
that
break, though, isn't it?
it really is. It can be, yeah.
Yeah.
And if I'm, not, intentional and
Uh-huh.
caught off guard or something, then yeah. Or if it's a place where that is the norm, then,
Yeah.
then I will follow that if what I'm doing is, trying to help them understand, particularly secular recovery. Or if
I'm
I'm just
trying to
there
introduce
talking about
myself.
my recovery, then I usually say I can't drink alcohol safely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it depends.
I like to say, I'm trying to say, I'm a person in long-term recovery. That's how everybody introduces themselves when they're speaking at this Recovery Alliance thing that I'm going to. They usually say, I'm
Right,
a person in long-term recovery, and to me that means blah 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 blah.
right.
Yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
trying to do
So what
that.
does it say? So what do you say then? What
For me,
to you that means what?
oh, to me, I'm a person in long-term recovery. To me, that means that I have not had a drink of alcohol since 1988, and I am going through a process of change.
Okay.
I guess something like that.
So do most people when they're saying to me that means, do they say like a sobriety date?
Some
I mean,
do.
is it
Some
usually
do, some
followed by a
don't.
date, or is it not?
Some do.
Okay.
It seems like a lot of them do. A lot of them say that means I haven't used any substances, addictive substances since whatever date. That's what I hear most of them say.
Okay.
But some of them don't. Some of them say something like, to me, it means, I don't know, I have to start to paying more attention. But it's just, they just describe what their recovery means to them,
Mm.
what it means to be
Mhm.
in recovery.
Yeah.
It is kind of interesting. It's a whole different deal. I really am kind of getting into it. I like it.
Mhm.
But
Yeah. Paula has a good comment here
what's
on,
say?
I have not seen a problem with having members with various substance abuse disorders. I have personally had a problem hearing sex addicts discuss pornography. Yeah, and I do think that that also, can get into some issues within the fellowship of power and of gender equality and gender equity and stuff, because sometimes I've seen that used in ways to make particularly women uncomfortable. I think it generally makes a lot of people uncomfortable. So I can definitely understand that. And but like you were saying, I think the majority of people talking in AA meetings, don't specify what their issue is. So even if they had a sex addiction, they wouldn't specify pornography. They might just say, I've had trouble using, or I've had a desire to use, or something like that, rather than giving us specifics. So and just along the lines that most people who are in AA meetings would say that maybe they had a drinking dream, or a desire to drink. Sometimes they'll specify, like, the exact drink they would like to have, but in general, people don't. So I think that some of that is to be considered, but definitely a good point to think about within the fellowship.
A couple of different comments. Dale says that every aspect of his life affects his sobriety, and his sobriety affects every aspect of his life. That means to me that anything is a legitimate subject to discuss at a meeting. Whereas Joe says that I don't go to AA to fix all my issues. I use some tools in the fellowship, but I use outside help too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And then he also said, this is kind of reminding me of something. Joe says, not funny when a meeting gets taken over. Now, I've never really seen a meeting get taken over by like addicts or whatever, people that weren't. Well, actually, I've seen this happen before. And it was really quite sad. But it was the oldest group in the state of Kansas, called the Shrine on the Hill. And it was Kansas City. We called it Shrine on the Hill because that's where they met, but it was actually Kansas group number 1, the oldest group ever. And I used to go there when I was first starting out, and there were some old timers there from go way, way back. Anyway, that group ended up dying. But what happened is they became like a community center. So they lived, the group was located in like a really poor section of Kansas City, Kansas. So the kids didn't have anywhere to go. There just wasn't anything to do. So it became like a community center. So kids in the neighborhood would gravitate there, and families and so forth. And then they would have these big open meetings, and people from the neighborhood who had no alcohol problem or whatever would come there. And it just got to be kind of out of hand. I mean, it got to be where it didn't even feel like an AA meeting anymore. It was kind of weird. But then I think what ultimately destroyed them is they got really big into playing poker all the time. It's kind of crazy. But I do remember when those meetings got taken over by the neighborhoods people that came in, and they weren't familiar with AA. They didn't really talk about having a problem with alcohol or any desire to get sober or anything like that. And it did get kind of weird, and it really sad that group folded. It was a group in their building. They actually still had beds there from the old days when they would have people actually detox there, and stuff like that. So I was really sad to see that group go away, but I'm glad that I got to experience and meet some of the old timers from that group, because they made an impression on me, and it was really cool. But yeah, Joe, I have seen that happen. I don't know if that was connected to this issue or not. I don't know what that would be connected to, just but whatever. Yeah, it can happen, I guess.
Well, Anchor mentioned it as well, like, gambling addicts and the 50/50 raffles and AA meetings and stuff, that they shut down a bunch of them where he's at. And, and it's something that, I've noticed in this area too, is that they do have like Texas Hold'em poker tournaments during the Super Bowl and things like that. So it's interesting. We're an interesting bunch of people, that's
We
for
are.
sure.
We
But
don't know what's gonna happen.
but yeah, also I responded to Joe Bob's comment, regarding what I said on most people don't mention their addictive substances, and what I meant by that, and I clarified, is that that where I've attended AA, that in the meetings it's generally frowned upon to talk about specific alcohol or to bring up
Right.
tequila or vodka or whatever, because that can be triggering for people.
Yeah,
And
and
so
at your
while
average
some
meeting.
people do, some people don't,
Yeah.
but it seems to be in this area that's kind of one of those unspoken cultural things, that
But also
that
just at your
it's
average
frowned upon.
meeting, unless it's a speaker meeting. I mean, who, your average meeting, we're not talking about drinking. I mean, we're talking
Yeah.
about living. We're talking about that kind of stuff. So it's just, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, so generally, yeah, you're not going to hear about the substance. You
Mhm.
don't, people don't generally go into a lot of great detail. Like we were talking
Mhm.
about the sex addict.
Mhm.
Like he's going into a lot of detail about his addiction and what he was doing and
Yeah.
so forth at the meeting. I don't know if that's appropriate. Maybe,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that's, he probably would be better just to not go into that kind of detail, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And
And I think
usually you
in
wouldn't, and
some,
usually you
yeah.
wouldn't, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So it's one of those things that sometimes somebody would talk to the person afterwards and maybe, clarify, or, hopefully the person would either connect with somebody and get a temporary sponsor, or, continue attending meetings until they, kind of learned the way that people speak. But yeah,
and look
that's
at
at
Paula.
least been my
I like,
experiences.
this is,
Yeah.
Paula says, NA is quite adamant that a potentially triggering substance should not be intensified. Oh
Hmm.
boy. I totally agree. I mean,
Yeah.
I can see why you would, that would be really important. I,
Hmm.
I went to this website. It was a secular, I think it was, I can't remember which one it was. I think it was NA Agnostica.
Hmm.
And I don't know. They had all these videos on YouTube that I couldn't even stand to watch because I thought they were too graphic about
Mm.
using. And I was
Okay.
really surprised that they would put that on their website, that it
Mhm.
was, because I just thought it was like, man, that seems kind of triggering. But
Mm.
maybe it wasn't. And maybe if I would have watched the videos, I would have understood it better. But I was kind of surprised to see that kind of information on their website. It was,
Hmm.
but that's what they did. Because I felt the same way. I felt like, you wouldn't really want to do something like that. But just me. I'm not being a critic. I guess I am. Only special group happenings. Okay, there we go. Anyway, boy, pretty interesting conversation so far. Okay, so, but yeah, Paula says NA is quite adamant that potentially triggering substances should not be intensified. Are you still there, Angela? I had a suspicion that she was gone. Oh boy, she'll probably come back online again. She's I love it when this happens, but she's actually in as I said, she's in California and she's on someone else's Wi-Fi, and she said it's could possibly happen. So anyway, so there you go. As I'm criticizing the NA Agnostica website, I'm sorry about that, guys. If there's anybody from NA Agnostica listening, it's okay. You got a nice site. Yeah. Oh, poor Angela. She had a power outage. Well, if you can come back on, that'd be great. If not, I will ramble on about something else unless somebody wants to call. She's coming back on. Anyway, this just shows you how badly I need Angela for these damn things. If I don't have somebody here talking to me, especially when they're gone, when you don't expect it. But what I can tell you, if you didn't notice, I put a link in to an organization called the Recovery Advocacy Project, which is it's at recoveryvoices.com. And so if you're interested in maybe just kind of learning about what recovery advocacy is all about, you can go to that website. And what they do, they're a national organization that links up with state organizations that help with advocacy for people in recovery. And I'm sorry if I'm just kind of going on and on about this stuff and boring you to death, because I know it doesn't really have anything to do with AA per se, but it's just something that I'm interested in, and you might be interested in learning about it. But it's just another way of being of service. And what I find interesting about it is I've always liked politics, but you don't really do politics in AA. Well, if you're going to do advocacy work for people in recovery, you do have to kind of get involved with politics, because that's how you get things to change in your state and make things better. So maybe that's how I'll spend my retirement. If that ever happens, I'm hoping I can retire in about 3 years. But okay, guys, anybody else have a comment out there? Help me out. You want to call me at 844-899-8278? Give me a call. You can talk about whatever you want to. I'll be happy to hear from you. Anyway, what I had my next the next podcast episode that we're going to be putting out is going to be about smart recovery. There she is. Oh my God.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm glad you're back.
I warned
so
you
weird?
that it's just crazy here.
That's so
with
weird. Not
internet.
only were you gone, but everybody in the chat room got really quiet. I mean, are they still there? I felt like I was just like, oh my God, I'm just talking to myself. I'm just talking nonsense. People they don't want to hear what I have to say.
Sorry, everyone. That's
I don't know
part
if
of the
they're
thing of
there.
being in a small town is on the coast. The internet is really, really terrible. And my Wi-Fi service, I have to do like the old TV antenna type, tricks to get it to work sometimes, where you have to stand on like one leg and, you have it in the air and do some sort of weird, yoga pose to get it to work. So I'm kind of blinking in and out. So I'm glad it lasted as long as it did.
Yeah. We only have 9 more minutes to go.
I know. So yeah, but you missed it here. Like, okay, it's gone, and so I muted myself anyway, even though I wasn't connected, just in case, and was like, the internet is out, and everybody.
Well, it was so funny because I was just insulting the MA Agnostica website, and also everything went quiet. I was like, oh, did you screw up?
Yeah, you made a major faux pas, John, and so everybody's just like, we're just going to ignore that and see if he learns his lesson. It's like a real meeting in that aspect. Oh, yeah. Yeah, but I get what you were saying, at least up until, I blinked out, was that it was an unusual thing to see. And it, some of this topic reminds me of being in meetings where, and in secular meetings where somebody's going off on the religious aspects and stuff. And then I feel uncomfortable about that as well, because I don't want somebody who's there who may be really into more of the traditional AA to then be uncomfortable with our meeting because somebody's going off about the religious aspect or the God stuff, and so I guess that probably goes back to just relaxing and accepting things as they are. That sometimes somebody's going to come in and they'll have just discovered the secular AA community, and they'll need to go off on things for a while because they've felt oppressed, or like they had to go along with something when they didn't want to, and so it's kind of the conversion process, like you experienced, yes. John, with suddenly you're a secular AA evangelist, and everybody's going to hear about it whether they want to or not. Right. So that still has made me uncomfortable at our own meetings in the past, with when I see somebody else there who's from more of the traditional community, because I think I get fearful that they're going to go back and tell other people, and then we're going to come up against problems. But the truth is, we never experienced, significant backlash from our meeting, and more meetings are following, and then some of the more traditional meetings are doing things to I don't think they'd identify it as secularizing, but they are becoming more aware that, maybe the Lord's Prayer isn't something that they have to end the meeting with, like there's no requirement for it, and that perhaps it would be helpful to newer people to not use it, so that they feel more comfortable, particularly if they're of a different religious background. So.
Yeah. I used to be terrified that someone was going to come to our meeting and, I don't know, just kind of give us a hard time or something. But I did have this lady, and I do respect her. She's really involved in service work and everything, but she's a bit of a traditions nutcase. And she came up to me and she asked me this question. She said, "John, is your group an AA group?" I said, "Well, yeah, sure, it's an AA group. Why are you asking me such an idiotic question?" I said, "Why are you asking me that?" She says, "Because I hear that somebody in your group is introducing themselves as an addict." I said, "What the fuck? What the fuck?" You can introduce yourself however the hell you want to, right? But anyway, she kind of scared me because she's somebody I've always respected. She's been around forever, and she's like she knows everything, and I don't know. It kind of shook me up a little bit, made me nervous, but it was
now you know enough that you can be like, well, it doesn't say that you can't do that in a meeting. It just says you have to have a desire to stop drinking, and we don't even require that you say that. Well, a couple of groups do, but in general, there's nothing that says, you have to identify yourself as an alcoholic in order to attend the meeting. Most of the time, at least at our meetings, we don't necessarily make somebody talk or make somebody tell us why they're there, or any of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it would be interesting if there were meetings that did that and how long they worked, and but it is something.
Bob's joke there to the
What was it?
The chapter 8 to the Wi-Fi's.
Nice. That would be an improvement, wouldn't it, everyone? Yeah. Now we know. Now we can have a suggestion to give to GSO.
Oh, Anchor.
The conference.
Anchor says she heard so much for what said in the meeting states meeting. Yeah, Anchor, you're right about that. But basically, what happened though is she came from a group that actually kind of at the time they were Nazis about reading that card. Nazi is probably a strong word, but they were just really rigid about reading that card about confining everything you say to alcoholism or whatever. And this one guy who introduced himself as an addict was uncomfortable at her group where they were doing that, so he started coming to my group, and I think that's why she knew about that. Anyway, it was kind of the whole thing was weird. But you're right, that's like, how do you know what this guy says at a meeting? It's none of your damn business. Anyway, she's a trip.
Yeah. Well, and also the whole, it's an honest desire, so how do we judge the honesty aspect, do we give them a quiz, and if they fall within a certain category, then we're like, okay, you're honest, or, do we set up, lie detector tests, even though, those aren't admissible in court, would they be admissible to AAs worldwide? And so we're just kind of weird. I mean, we find stuff to get excited about or to argue about. I've just described several times the lady I know who, admits that she destroyed a meeting by bringing up whether or not they should have cookies and things, and saying that they shouldn't, that the money shouldn't go towards treats that they collect in the during the seventh tradition, and and that's all of that happens. It's all part of the thing.
We can find anything to argue about, can't we?
Yeah, so maybe that's how we should think of it, is that that we're all a bunch of weirdos, and that if you're a weirdo as well, and you have a problem with alcohol, or you want to recover, then there's a bunch of weirdos out there that can help you with that, or who have recovered, not from being weirdos, but from a substance that affects how we get along in society. So all good suggestions. I'll write this up and send it off to GSO as part of the the secular sobriety podcasts, general
Mhm.
recommendations to AA World Service.
Well, this has been a good one. It's been fun. Thank you,
Yeah.
Angela, once again. Evidence. Talk about evidence based. When you disappeared, it just shows how badly you're needed here. Because I was like, oh, what do I do? What do I do?
Well, thank you, everyone. I love all of you too, and I will do my best to keep my internet secure so that that doesn't happen.
And thank everybody. Thank all of you for being here and participating. Thank you for calling, Cliff. It was great talking to you, and I hope that I see you in Wichita when your meeting is up and running. And thank you everybody for commenting in YouTube and Facebook. And Joe's final comment here: the traditions are not rules; they're principles based on experience. There you go. So that means you can do whatever you want. You can break them. So with that, I'm going to say.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Been great. We'll see you next Friday. We'll come up with a good topic and then we'll have a good time. Y'all take care. Be well.
Bye-bye.